Welcome back to another episode of Eve Business Insider. Today we're looking at a ship class called the Jump Freighter, which is the luxury hauler of New Eden. These are fantastic vessels that are going to make bulk hauling extremely easy for you. So they do require multiple characters. They're going to use a capital jump drive. They're able to dock at citadels, including mediums, which is great. Up to 300,000 M3 makes these perfect for star bases or as the logistical backbone for a corporation. Now, before you begin, you are going to need some skills that include Advanced Spaceship Command 5, Jump Drive Operation 5, and Jump Drive Cali 5 is a high recommendation for this. Of course, there's also some ISK considerations to be made here before you jump in as well. Now, for additional requirements, you are going to require one or more Cyno field pilots that are going to require CPU Management 5 and Cyno Field Theory. These are best used as Mimitar Galanti or Caldari because those can make use of the rookie ship for their Cynoing, whereas the Amara one doesn't actually have enough cargo space for that. And of course, you're also going to need docking access. Now, as mentioned, jump freighters are a fantastic high-volume hauler that really are the luxury haulers of New Eden. And so this is not necessarily right for every purpose, but there are certain applications where a jump freighter is just going to make your time spent so much more enjoyable. But they are, of course, as I mentioned, going to require an additional pilot for this. Now, the pilot itself, there's really not too much to it. You're just going to need the Cyno field module and some liquid ozone. And as a result, you're going to be able to basically transition through vast uncharted or charted areas of New Eden very quickly, and so stations are really the lifeblood of jump freighters. Of course, you can also use citadels, and in rare instances, posses. But I think their best use is definitely jumping station to station, as I did show you in my video for reactor farming. So make sure you check that out. Using a jump freighter is really an option that, in combination with something like a deep space transport, is going to make your total hauling duty, a fraction of what it could be. So, for fitting and prep on a jump freighter, you are going to need some modules. Now, some expanded cargo holds, inertial stabs, and jump drive econs are going to be required, and I'm going to change those depending on what the actual purpose is of my trip. So you can see here I'm going to refit until I do have just enough cargo to fit my modules. Without being over on cargo, because of course that would prevent you from undocking, and then the remaining slots I'm going to fill up initially with jump drive economizers. Now this is going to make my trip just a little bit cheaper overall, and that will start to stack up over long hauls. Now you will also need some fuel for your jump freighter, and this is going to depend on the race of the jump freighter. Of the 4 races, each does have their own unique fuel type to use, so make sure you pack that. And of course, you're going to want to take, between 100 to 200,000 isotopes is my personal preference. 100,000 fitting in your fuel bay is enough to make a pretty good distance. And then just keeping an extra 100k with you is a guarantee that you're going to be able to get back safely. You're never going to wind up stuck in a position that you either have to pay way too much for fuel or simply don't have access for fuel and are stranded. So definitely never leave with an empty fuel bay on your jump freighter. Now, as far as the actual jumping is concerned, it's very straightforward. It's super easy. There's a couple different ways that you can actually access the jump menu. My favorite is to go ahead and use the right click on your capacitor menu, navigate to jump to, and then you're going to see a list of beacons as well as any Cyno fields that are up in your fleet. Of course, you have to be fleeted with your Cyno for this to work. So all I'm going to do from there is just basically go ahead and click on that Cyno, and in fact most of what jump freighting is about is deciding where to place those Cynos and deciding on your route. So for that we have a couple options. You can either start from a particular system and then check the range for all jump freighters from that system. This will generate on a map like DOTLAN, as you see here, a list of the systems that are in range of Amar. So you could simply pick from that list and make your jumps that way. The other thing that you could do is use the jump planner, which is going to go ahead and allow you to plot multiple waypoints, and then it's going to introduce the ideal Cyno spots in between those waypoints. So you're going to have to tell it what ship you're using and stuff like that as well. If your skill is different than calibration 5, you would need to change that. But as you can see here, from Amar to Myla, there's only 2 midpoints, so I would have to move 2 Cyno positions to get to there, and what I'm going to do is just check each of those for what the stations look like. Unfortunately, on this one, it's not so good, but there are some stations that are completely safe. We're going to get into this in a minute, but these station models and a few others are basically completely safe for you, so you should stick to these if possible. Now, there is a guide available that I will put a link in the description for, as usual, that I think is a great resource for players that are new to jump freighting. This is a Cyno placement guide that includes some generic instructions as well as a table of charts that tells you which are kind of the better models to use. And then for each of the station models, you do have an image of the best Cyno location, a picture of the station, and then sort of just a 3-tiered rating green, yellow, red of whether or not they're acceptable for transit and traditional use. And so I would pick from that list only the good stations, and revising my my route planner here, what I'm going to do is go ahead and hit this select alternative system button on the one with sort of dodgy stations. And I have some options here. I could go through the list individually and I could find a system that I like, but I noticed there's a couple on the list that I'm familiar with. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one here, IGN, which is a pretty popular low-sec system. There can be some ganks here, but as far as ganks, I would rather lose a Cyno than have to dock in a station that's a kickout or something like that. So I'm just checking here to make sure, but in fact this Galanti station was on my list, so perfect spot to use as an alternate. And I think remapping for alternates is always a good idea. So, even after reading your guide, you're going to want to make sure that you go to these stations, visit them, and then using tactical overlay and hovering on your Cyno, this of course is using my Cyno pilot, I'm going to see a sphere, red sphere, that represents all of the possible locations within 5 kilometers that a jump freighter or any capital ship could spawn inside of a Cyno. So what I'm going to do is basically kind of map this out in my brain, and then my goal is to go to each of the positions, top left, up, down, left, right, and just make sure that all of these are within the docking radius of the station, and as well that the Cyno position itself doesn't overlap with any of the station model that could result in a bump, which is one of the perils of jump freighting that we'll get into in a minute. So in fact, in this case, you'll see that this station, even though it's not great, there are some positions that I can get to where this sphere of 5 kilometers doesn't intersect anywhere that's outside of the docking radius. So I'm just moving to where the bottom of the sphere was initially, and I'm watching the station itself to tell me when I go beyond 0 meters, and therefore I'm outside of the docking radius. And in fact, I'm able to find and isolate a pretty good position, so I'm going to move back up towards the station, and I'm going to create a bookmark for this called Cyno Spot that I'll use to approach anytime I use this particular station. And from there, I'm going to be basically safe to go ahead and jump in my jump freighter. Now, jump freighting is a relatively safe practice as long as you're in keeping with the good standards. So that's why the number one thing that we did cover is the station position, and that's going to prevent you from bumping up the station model. The next most likely way that you're going to get yourself in trouble in a jump freighter is in high sec in your transition from that low sec jump back home, and it's through suicide ganking. So the way that we would cover this is basically once you are ready to refit your jump freighter, of course, using inertia stabs to make your time on gates as low as possible. At the time that you undock, I want you to pay attention to something that a lot of jump freighter pilots are going to forget. This is a really important trick. Your Cyno that you've lit in order to jump to this low sec, that's going to stay burning for 10 minutes. Right? And when that Cyno goes down, I highly suggest that you bring with your jump freighter some extra liquid ozone, or have some handy for the Cyno pilot to reuse. And what I would do is just keep that Cyno burning the entire time that you're transitioning back to your market hub or through high sec, wherever your destination is. And if you should come along something like a MacLeod, which is, bumping you, is typically the way they set up suicide ganks, then you're going to jump right back to that Cyno. Or if you should see a whole whackload of catalysts drop onto grid, then of course, same thing. You're going to go ahead and panic, right click on your cap, and you're going to jump out to that Cyno. Now you do want to do that before any trouble arises, before warp scrams and stuff like that could affect you, and you'll be nice and safe. The third thing that could happen to you that will get you in trouble is on your jump in initially to this low sec system. There's 2 real places that a super carrier, low sec super, could actually get you. There's a couple guys on the server that do this that's really pretty nasty if you're not paying attention to it. And so the main way they're going to get you is when you're undocking and you're about to warp, they're going to catch you right at this point when your warp drive is active. And they're going to light a Cyno beside you, jump in a super, and the super's fighter bombers have enough alpha to just go ahead and kill you in one shot. Now, there obviously is a counter to this, is just being aware, and if another Cyno shows up beside you, you're ready to control space and dock right back up. And that's where this concept of floating off the radius of your undock becomes really important, because you need to have that time in order to control space and go ahead and dock up to avoid that particular gank. So at this time, with all the basics covered, you're pretty much free to go out and explore the universe and use your jump freighter as much as you would like to. The last thing that I do want to cover, however, is the concept of jump fatigue. Now, this is a limiting factor for all capital ships that's going to prevent the number of times that you can jump in a rapid succession. Now, jump freighters do have a bonus to jump fatigue reduction, but even still, you're going to notice upon your jump in that you receive 2 timers. Number 1, the orange timer is your jump reactivation timer. This will prevent you from jumping again regardless. And number 2 is your blue timer or fatigue timer, which is a carryover timer that's going to incrementally and then eventually exponentially increase the number of times that you jump in rapid succession. So what we want to do here is, of course, allow the orange timer to completely deplete. We wouldn't be able to jump if it did have any time left on it. And then as well, we want to wait for that blue timer to reduce itself lower than 10 minutes. And at this point, the exponential growth factor of fatigue won't be an issue. So your regular jumping cycle should look like jump first, wait for that timer to reduce to 10 minutes or below, and then go ahead and make an additional jump. Or, if you'd like to, you can use this time to burn back to high sec, of course, and then you're essentially free to jump as many times as you would like to. Now, if you want, near the end of your day, or if you only have a certain amount of jumping to do, you can go ahead and crank up this fatigue timer as high as around a day before it's going to start to become a serious issue. Alright, now that is going to be it for this video, my dudes. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully this helps you using your jump freighter in a very nice, safe method. And in the future, we'll look at some investments that have to do with jump freighters that are going to sort of earn you back the cost on this ship. So, of course, as usual, guys, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell beside the subscribe button as well. Turn on channel notifications and make sure that you always see my videos on day 1. If you like EVE Online and you want to start a trial to give it a shot, make sure you check out the link in the description to get a free 250,000 SP. We'll be back real soon with more tutorials, guys. Thanks very much.